Good evening, everyone, and welcome to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. My name is Andy, and I work as operations manager here at IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway. We want to wish you a happy new year and hope you've had a beautiful holiday season. Today is Inauguration Day. It's not a word we use a lot in English, both either in America or around the world. So inauguration, we are in the United States putting into office a new president today, only he's not new. Donald Trump is returning to office. So it's a big day for the world. It's a big day for America. We thought that today would be an excellent day to look at a quite concerning topic for everybody, and that is the rise of narcissism. Now, IKYA will go into much more detail about what narcissism really is, where it comes from, and a little bit of the history and why it is a problem, especially today. But I think we're all aware that it is on the rise. And when narcissism is a focus on the self, and really a focus on the self above all others, I think we can all agree that that is quite concerning in a world with a lot of people, a little space, resources are limited, we're already kind of at each other's throats, and then we're increasingly concerned about the self more than other. So we thought it was a very timely topic as of the first one for this year. And it's a really interesting spiritual principle that IKYA will go into. Now, before we get started, already down below, like tonight's episode, and please be sure to share it with as many people as you can so they can join us live tonight for the discussion. And remember that IKYA Live is a news program unlike others because you can actually write in or ask your questions in the studio audience live directly to spiritual teacher IKYA. It's a really unique opportunity, and we strongly encourage you to take advantage of it by being proactive. Make it a discussion. So write in your questions in the chat. I will relay them to IKYA. We've also got students here in the audience. So let's make it a lively and interesting discussion. And don't be afraid to bring your perspective to bear. It's actually when we can look at things from all angles that we really can kind of pull apart a spiritual principle and see how it works. So be sure to like our channel and subscribe, and do so on all the other social media. Before we get started, please spread the word. Okay, so we are going to jump into IKYA Live with spiritual teacher IKYA by asking the question, IKYA, in this rise of narcissism, the question we posed for tonight's episode is, how do we deal with a narcissist? But perhaps before we answer that, you need to tell us more about what narcissism is and why we are where we are today.
Well, narcissism is considered a personality disorder and a medical condition. It's when people have an unreasonably high interest in themselves, and they want admiration and acknowledgement and have a heightened sense of self-importance. Today, this is the default. And we'll look at why we are all turning into narcissists, because yes, you too. It's part of our society. And we have to figure out why is this happening? And how can we work our way out of it, and how can we deal with it? Now, I've talked about this before, but there are several reasons why we're more self-centered. Let's start with number one. When we look at our survival strategies as a life form, we have two main strategies. Number one is to win. Number one is to draw attention to ourselves when we are sick, because then we can convince other people to help us in our own survival when we're not able to do it ourselves. So we have those two ways of dealing with life when we feel that we can win. When the mountains are smaller, when you can be a local hero, it's easier to win. Right? And then genetically we'll stick with the first strategy. The challenge in the world today is that in the globalist society, there will be more and more losers. because there can be fewer winners. The mountains are taller, and it's not enough to be the best in your neighborhood. Remember back in the day was you could be the best in your tribe, in your village, a very small group of people. You could, no matter who you were, you would impress several people. That would make you feel good about yourself. Now, that is very difficult. So it's easier to play the victim, to be entitled and all of that. So this is an important kind of psychological change. And of course, corporations and marketing are utilizing that. And I'm aware now that the global kind of network of corporations are basically a misery industrial complex. They only sell us products when we feel that we lack something, right? It's whenever we feel miserable, when we're depressed, when we feel that everything is not right, and we've been told that, well, then buy something. And over time, it turns into, well, you feel bad because there is something you don't have. And now we believe that because I don't have something, I feel bad. We've been brainwashed for decades, and it prints money. So corporations want us to be this way. They've also tried to make us more self-centered, to dissolve the family, to tell you that you need nothing, because when you are on your own, you buy more than if you're in a relationship. A single household buys more stuff than if you have a household with a family per head. So it makes sense. It's a business decision to make us all lonely and miserable and depressed and aimless, because then we self-medicate continuously and we just want more stuff to numb the pain, because we all feel like losers. So this is a big part of it. And the corporations have been very successful at making us feel this way. So very few people in our part of the world are happy. We can experience temporary happiness when we buy something. But we know, for instance, if we buy a new car, that lasts for about 3 months. If we buy a home, that will last for about a year. If you buy a piece of clothing, that will last for about a week. And we've been told also by the corporations that how you feel is the only thing that is important, right? It has to be instant. You should listen to those instincts. You want something. And when we are driven into feeling bad about ourselves, that we're always losing, we need, some, it could be food, snacks, whatever it is. We eat more when we are depressed, right? So it's in everybody's interest to keep you depressed and miserable, because then you consume more. But then it gets to the point where you consume more because you are constantly depressed. The brain chemistry changes. And we've reached that point in our society where this is now a machine supported by people, because we're all addicted to this nonsense. And it's very difficult for individuals to get out of, because we are groomed into this behavior from childhood. Now, one big part of this is, of course, that to make people more addicted, we need to make people more dependent on their feelings and emotions and needs. So it's been a project for decades from corporations to make us trust our feelings. When you look at all advertising, it's just what you want now. And listen to that. This is the solution. So it's always about addressing an emotional need that we then think we can fix with something that we buy. Genetically, we're not smarter than that. And I've explained this by also explaining that for our brains, we're not used to emotions yet because it's abstract. So we've had them as instincts and emotions and feelings. We're always used to, I'm hungry, I need food. And then when you find food, you get reward chemicals. But as we developed societies, as we became more complex beings, we developed more of the abstract part of our minds, thoughts, feelings, fantasies, imagination. But the body still does not understand the difference between abstract thinking and reality. This is also why the brain cannot differentiate between something you imagine and something that's actually happening. The brain will have the same response to it. Now, when we then have negative emotions, the brain will say there is a physical cause and there will be a physical solution. So instead of learning how to deal with our emotions, instead of learning how to deal with our inner selves, our inner pains, in an increasingly complex reality, our brain will say whenever we feel bad, it's because of something practical and physical that you need to fix. And when they're then told that, well, eat a snack, buy a new dress, right? Buy a new car, you deserve it. We're then brainwashed into reinforcing the connection between emotional pain and physical solution. And it's logical for our biology to go along with that. And the corporations are fully aware of this. When it comes to food, there are a lot of food additives that are legal that only serves the purpose of making you more addicted. We live in a machine today of corporations where people are mainly seen as a source of income. And first, you have to make them miserable or sick so you can make money off of their attempts at healing themselves with strategies that will never work. So they will keep going and keep being miserable and desperate. And this is where we are today. But when this has been part of the strategies, the emphasis on feelings and emotions as the most important part, because that's where your pain is, right? Kids are told that how you feel is the most important thing of all. So they're then told that, yeah, your feelings are your truth. So they're also been trained through the commodification of education. Because remember, education has to be relevant for the real world. So corporations have, for decades, had influence. We can tell ourselves, they haven't, they have. This narrative of emphasizing feelings and emotions and emotional pain with physical solutions is now part of the thinking behind how we bring up our children. Just think of how much we emphasize the emotional well-being. And that, like for kids, and how that has taken over skill building. And this is also why we see kids today being extremely self-centered. Because they're told that whatever they feel, that's more important than anything else. So they trust their feelings and they believe that their feelings are bigger and more important than anything else. So, and this is just the start of it. Now, so we can see like the consumerism thing, that's one thing that is driving us further into it, because the more we are self-medicating with whatever we buy, the more we're telling ourselves that whatever I feel in the moment, it has to be solved immediately. Now, to make positive changes in our life, to achieve something, that takes time. And to create the life we want, we always have to negotiate the balance between short-term gratification over long-term achievement. When studies have been done on people trying to find the balance between the two, sacrificing short-term gratification for long-term achievement is always the best choice. Then you end up with a productive, happy life because you stay on course and you keep building. So what happens when we're told that we should only look for solutions that are short term, we lose interest in long-term achievements. And then we start looping around just finding emotional solutions again and again and again and again. Just look at how most people in the West are dealing with relationships, right? If they don't satisfy you emotionally, well, you deserve better and you find someone new. In the old days, you found someone, you married them, and then you have to work it out. You were not always successful, but overall, the relationships would be more successful because you had a long-term strategy, long-term investment, and you wanted that long-term result. It's the same with building a career, right? You need a plan, you need long-term thinking, you need long-term strategies. Instead, many people today, especially when they're younger, they want their job to be molded around them. Not everyone, but it's definitely a big part of Gen Z problems in the workforce. They want home office, they want a lot of time off, they want everything to be adjusted to them. So it's the result of that short-term thinking being rewarded in their upbringing. And this is basically narcissistic behavior, that, I am more important than anything else, so everything else should adjust to me. One thing that we need to understand when it comes to how we are shaping our children is that narcissism is psychologically the result of neglect, or the experience of neglect. And you can ask yourself, how is that possible in a world where we have more stuff than ever? And that is exactly the problem. Because genetically, we are supposed to, as children, to learn skills, survival skills, real knowledge, understand how to function in the world. Which means you have to give them what they need and not what they want. What we want is always a result of our current state, our current knowledge, our current needs. So what we want is basically a strategy to reward what we already know and what we already do. So when you give kids what they want, you're telling them that you don't have to learn anything. You don't have to achieve anything. You just have to want, and your feelings are so important. So, we want you to feel good and to have a happy life. So we just give you stuff. But the brain will interpret it as, oh, I don't have to do anything. And then we tell them, you're good enough the way you are. You're always a winner. On top of that, that is neglect. The thing is, genetically, a child will test their parents again and again to see, do they have the necessary skill set to teach me, to make me a person that can win? Because genetically, that's what life is. To climb to the top of a mountain, dominate, and then your genes should be, spreading around the world. So, when, again, we then give kids stuff, they understand that the parents are submitting, because giving someone what they want is submission. Think of through history. Think of people in a tribe like Stone Ages until recently. When you give what someone wants to them, it's a sign of submission, because it serves no purpose other than showing your affection and your dedication. And then that person will say, well, I'm on top, I don't have to change. Simply by being me, I get stuff. And that's a signal that the child's brain will trigger, saying you are good enough the way you are worthy of getting stuff simply because you exist. Now, to build someone into a functional human being, you should not ever give them what they want, only what they need, because that points forward. And for a child, what they should get should be part of a reward system. They need to achieve something, but it should also be what they need. And what they need is to build life skills. They need to build knowledge and expertise and understand how to be an adjusted human being. But when we give them what they want, we're telling them, you don't have to do that, because you are already important. You are the center of the universe, and you are so wise, right? It's a sign that parents are in a state of submission to their children. And what happens then? The child says, their genes, I can't trust these people. They're not leaders, they're followers, they're following me. So I'm obviously the head of the family. I have to take charge to survive. I have to figure out things my way. And the parents say, yay, you. Oh, you're so wise, you'll figure it out. I will just be here to support you. You're my great hero. So, and we ask why we're, creating narcissists now. This is why, combined with the mystery industrial complex. It's a perfect match. So, kids are testing their parents all the time for leadership and if they can be trusted in both upbringing, making them survive, and teaching them what it means to be a productive person. So we need to, change things. If you have kids, stop giving them what they want and stop negotiating with your kids. They're not wise. Wisdom takes a lifetime of experience, right? Reflection, hard work. And sometimes even then, we don't get wise. Children are not wise. They can say, like both a fool and a wise man can say the same things, but it's coming from very different places, right? It's like, one way to explain this is that a child can say, like, who's your best friend? Oh, my dog. I love my dog. You say, oh, it's such a big heart. And then you can ask a politician. And the politician will, well, if you want a friend in politics, buy a dog. That's wisdom. It's the same thing, but coming from very different life experiences. So lack of life experience does not make you wise. You don't even have knowledge. So we need to stop catering to ignorance and just, believe that someone's feelings, if they're pure, that's all we need. We need to go back to achievements, because that is how humans have operated throughout evolution. So in order for kids to not become narcissists, they need a framework of authority, leadership, that will teach them life skills, will teach them how to learn, that will teach them to prioritize long, lasting achievements and long-lasting strategies over instant gratification. And since the child's brain is very, very susceptible to any programming they're supposed to, do you want them to get addicted to short-term gratification? Do you want them to achieve something in life? And this is very simple. If you teach them that they need to think long-term, they need to build, they will do so, because that is how they will be rewarded. So do not let the child decide, because when humans are left to their own devices, they will always choose instant gratification because it's right there. Why should I have to work for anything, right? Again, when you then have, on top of that, corporations that keep pushing the same narrative, everything should be instant because you deserve it, because you're so wonderful, we all become narcissists. We live in a narcissistic society now. I will kind of say that we live in a sociopathic society. And all we can do about it is to do the work ourselves. We had a comment or question?
Yes, it might be good timing to bring it in because from YouTube, Hogna was wondering this development of narcissism over these past generations, is it tied in any way to an increased either occurrence of neurodivergence like ADHD and Asperger, or perhaps an increased awareness of it? Because it's interesting, people can often experience neurodivergent people as being self-centered. They're quite inside themselves. Is there any tie between these two trends?
No. It's tied to the slow expansion of consciousness, though. Because spiritually, humans are still at the very beginning of discovering themselves as individuals. And when we discover something new, we are quite immature. So it's this slow shift where humans gradually become aware of themselves and who they are independently of the world. We need to figure out how we can both be strong individuals, use our talents about who we are in concert with the rest of the world. But just like a child, it has to be shaped. And that will take generations and generations and generations. So it's these kind of small steps. It's important to remember that humans as a life form is not done yet. This form, this current human, is a transitional version. Right? As evolution moves forward, humans will change. And this is a kind of very slow change that we can see. So in the big picture, when we zoom out, we can see that is happening. So over time, that will mature. But, also a part of that is that we are discovering that the human brain is not one thing. So all these variations in human brains, they've always been there. But now we are discovering them. Because, we used to think that, if you go back, if you're 100 years, blood was blood. If you need a blood transfusion, you could do it from a dog or a cow, or because it's blood. Now we understand more. And it's the same, every time we discover something, we believe it's one thing. There's no diversity. So when we understand ourselves as a group identity, that is who we are. And part of that being kind of broken up through immigration and people traveling and all of that, it's very difficult to point to a country today, especially in the West, and say, well, this is that identity, this is who we are, because there's so many things, so many ethnicities and cultures and all of that mashed together. And that will also open up for more variations of how to be human. So when we open that door, there will be more variations. It's important to understand that many of these so-called diagnoses are simply variations in brain functions, different talents, different forms of intelligence. And just like when you go back in history, like when we had decided the norm, everything outside that norm would be an illness, right? And it's natural, it's the human way of thinking. And today when we discover that, people have different brains, they work differently, humans didn't used to care, because if you did not comply, you would be whipped into place and you would be yelled at, and that was that. And and now we hopefully want people to be themselves. But as part of that whole movement, humans also want to be more self-centered, because they can feel, I am me, I'm special, all of that. And then we become very self-centered, very egotistical in that kind of journey of discovery. But it's simply because we're so immature as a life form. So it's important to also have that perspective with us. But we will discover that there are almost countless different ways to have a human brain. And, we need more variation as we become more and more unique, as consciousness is opening up and we become more unique individuals, right? But becoming a narcissist is not it. It's the opposite. We are supposed to bring what is unique to the world, meaning we have to learn how to utilize who we are, understand, okay, what gift am I? What tool am I? And then apply it so that the world can become a better place, so that the world may move forward. Not say, look at me, I want to be admired because I'm so special. But this is what we've been teaching our kids. This is what the industries are trying to make us believe, and we want to believe it because it's very pleasant.
Yes, we have a question on YouTube. So you've just said that there are many more narcissists now today, but that there are a lot of people who are in a more narcissistic state who don't really want to be that way. And this student doesn't understand this. If we choose our incarnations, why would they not want to be narcissists? And what would be the purpose for those of us on the path of awakening to then choose a family where one or both parents are narcissistic?
Now, understand that what we often refer to as karma, that is the resistance, basically being the distance between what you believe and what is. Evolution, spiritually, also means that you have grown to a certain point, right? You have unfolded yourself, you have a certain level of consciousness, wisdom, all of that as a spiritual being. And then there is the next step. And when that becomes clear to you, often by you interacting with it, that distance will be the active karma. So there's always more to learn, right? So just like in the physical journey where hopefully you get wiser throughout your lifetime, it's the same thing spiritually. So you will incarnate in the setting that will give you the challenges needed, just like in any form of education. You will choose the setting where you can learn and you can study and you can practice and you can figure things out. And when you move into narcissism, that's because, well, that is part of your kind of imbalance, that is part of your resistance and what you haven't figured out yet. Trying to then, in the human life form, understand more what it means to be an individual. So it means that gives you a certain angle, showing, oh, all right, you haven't understood that part yet. Spiritual, we always seek those kind of points and perspectives that can give us a fuller picture, that can give us that insight that will transform us and help us grow. So we will always, yes, choose the settings where we have not only a lot to learn, but where the opportunities to learn will be plentiful. And that does not mean that we will then choose a place of harmony and, so we can take our time in learning what we want to do. It's not how life works. If we're being honest, when we're in this form, we only change when we are forced to, right? When we have to. So we choose those settings because it's absolutely necessary. So what we're seeing now when things are kind of playing out, it means that, yeah, this is collective karma, meaning that there are whole kind of generations of spiritual beings incarnating, sharing some of the same things they're studying. And as I said, because we are moving towards a world where the individual will be more important, we have to also go through the maturities, right? And then the spiritual beings of the souls, and that at that level will be experiencing and working their way through that. And then as the human life form becomes smarter and more evolved, then souls on that level will incarnate because then that's beneficial for them. So it's completely natural and it's nothing to worry about in a way. But at the same time, we're also here to co-create with the opportunities that the planet is giving us. And it's possible also, for instance, when you have children, to not just sit there or not just be part of the collective, but try to develop them into more mature, aware beings, because that is also a choice. The world is not kind of fatalistic. You have a setting I often compare to a video game, where the video game is a video game, but there are billions of different ways to play it, and that's up to you. So there will be many kind of levels, many opportunities, many angles, and many different levels of consciousness that you can enter and explore and play with. So nothing is kind of locked or limited. They represent starting points and subjects and issues that you are studying. But the rest is up to you. And I think when it comes to narcissism, it is really important to see and zoom out and see that humans are in a very strange place right now in multiple ways. But narcissism is a way to cope, right? As I said, when things become too complex and we don't understand, how can I even win? How can I achieve anything? What are the rules? We just go, well, I have to trust myself and my feelings and just, fill my own pockets as much as I can. We get stressed. So when we are stressed and when we experience fear, we become more self-centered, right? Because when we are feeling safe and comfortable and competent and we have achieved things, achievement is a way for you to learn how to survive in this world. Then you become more generous, right? Generosity comes natural for a human when that person experiences that. I understand how to survive. Then it's easier. When we feel we don't understand how to survive, we become more self-centered. And one thing that is important to understand, that throughout history, normally when we reached the age of between 7 and 10, we had pretty much learned everything we need to know. So we could then mature and become an adult. By the age of 12, and then it was time to marry and have kids. It was, and then you died at 25, right? So when there is an increased experience of complexity, right, we have to try to figure it out as individuals. And we try, but we can't figure out the rules. If we want to survive, if we want to be successful, right, you need to understand the rules. If you lived in a tribe of 20 people, 150,000 years ago, that would be easy. If you were, in a family, and what they did, they were part of the, like warriors, for instance, like protecting the tribe, then that would be your job, and you could impress everyone by throwing this, spear longer than anyone else. The rules would be clear and you could win. Today, how do you do that? And because the brain needs to feel, I got this, before you're triggered into becoming an adult. Because that is really the switch that will make an adult. I understand the rules now. I understand how to play it and how to build. That never happens for a lot of people. So they do not become adults. So you see a lot of these adult babies walking around, right? Adult kids. It can be people in the 40s and the 50s and they're still behaving like children because their brains have not gotten to the point of saying, I understand this. And then what parents are doing also, they bring up their kids saying, well, trust your feelings. You can't use your feelings to navigate. You can only use your feelings to understand what you need and want in the moment. They do not contain any truth except what you feel you want. You can't build. You can't figure out what is true. I often use that as an example. If you were able to do that, I could give you a math equation. You could feel your way to the answer. You can't. It's simply a matter of you connecting to whatever your body chemistry is telling you. So when there is an increased complexity and parents are saying your feelings are more important than anything, we're doing the opposite of what we need, making it even more difficult to become an adult. because the brain needs to understand, this is the map, this is the playing field, these are the rules, I can play. And for the most part, parents are not doing this anymore. So then they have adult kids, right? Who also behave like narcissists. So we have to look at all of this. And it's not difficult to change, but humans at this point are too addicted. Do we have any more questions?
Yes. So we have a question, kind of a practical, everyday question. So if my boyfriend takes pictures of himself and posts it on social media, is he narcissistic? And then can I change the energy of that interaction with my own energy, or should I just go away and focus on myself?
Right. Posting photos is not necessarily narcissism. It's part of communication today. I think if we place our self-value in how people respond, and that we want admiration, and if not, our whole life is ruined, right? Then yes. But for many people, you know, social platforms are just part of life today. But there is a difference when one seeks admiration and wants to be the center of attention, only based on who we are, right? And this is again the change when we have been told that you don't have to do anything. You deserve simply because you are wonderful the way you are. And I tell people, you know, and many people are confronted by this first time they hear it, is that you're not good enough. We have to stop telling our kids that they're good enough because they're not. And then we also reward them because they're good enough. They don't see why they should learn. Why should they learn? Right? And when we look at where we are today, people can just make things up and they believe whatever they think is the same as fact because they've been told their whole life that that's how it works. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to achieve anything. You don't need to know anything. Right? So it simply means that we stop seeking knowledge, because seeking knowledge for the human body and the human brain is about not being good enough, not being able to function and to achieve the goals, the long-term goals you want to be a success in life. But if you can manipulate the world to just give you stuff, well, you're in that goal already and you don't have to do anything for it. So that's a smarter strategy. So that sense of entitlement, you know, comes from having been told that you don't have to do anything. Life should just give you whatever. And then we figure out that, oh, we can actually do that. If I get enough attention, that will happen. And of course, there's a smarter strategy. This is the same as we do when we self-medicate. It's going directly to the chemicals. This is why when people take drugs, it's not the drugs in themselves. You get addicted to your own brain chemicals because they are telling you that you've been climbing the highest mountain. You're the best person in history. And you will believe it without having to do anything. So there are so many aspects to this, and there are so many things we can do. Yeah?
Yes. So today is the inauguration, and the world does fairly openly talk about Donald Trump as a narcissist. So I think that's okay that we say it as well tonight. There's a direct question then about, okay, so if Trump is a narcissist, let's just say anybody in power in a narcissistic state of being, can they be a force of good in the world?
Narcissism is, for the most part, making it about you, right? And that can also work as someone being invested. Because when someone identifies, you've seen that throughout history, when they identify, I am the country, right? I am the people, they want to win. because everything reflects on them and they want to win. And I think, Trump has some of that. But no matter what brain variations we have, we can still, do things and express ourselves. But it's not healthy, right? Because in the case of Trump, as everyone knows, everything is about transaction. He does not understand, giving and taking. It's just threats and deals or whatever. So what we see today is that, when we are taught that our feelings are more important, then other people's feelings are not that important. And that, of course, is over time, it makes people feeling less empathy towards other people, because their own feelings are much more important. And back to, in Trump's case, he will be studied for centuries. And it's back to neglect, right? When you look at the psychology of his parents as well, Trump was definitely, he had these tendencies from before, but when he's also exposed to that type of neglect that we talked about, you may have what you want, but not what you need. And then on top of that, not being acknowledged. So there are no rules. You're not told when you're doing something right or something wrong. It molds the brain in a certain way. And he is definitely the poster boy of this type of brain variation. But when it comes to him, obviously, this is medical grade narcissism, not kind of socially induced narcissism. But it's like we choose the heroes that represent us, right? We choose the heroes that we want to be. And when you look at after Second World War, for instance, the heroes that people had would be people who showed selflessness, greater good, higher ethics, who would do things for the world around them in a very selfless and productive way. Now we have influencers. For the most part, it's the opposite, just people wanting attention and people giving it to them because they want to be in that position too. Everybody wants the drugs because being an influencer, it's that fantasy of getting admiration simply for me being, so important. And that's the shortcut to everything good we feel will satisfy that narcissistic complex we have. But the thing that we don't understand when it comes to trying to kind of self-medicate narcissism, when it comes from not having received what we need, but rather what we want, okay? That is a simple way of explaining how it happens. Your only tool is to seek more of what you want, because that is the short-term gratification. Well, what you need is what you really need, which can teach you the more kind of long-term perspectives. That is what will heal this type of behavior in anyone. But as, for instance, an influencer will, for the most part, just seek that instant gratification, and they will never be satisfied. It will never heal the inner kind of wounds of experienced neglect, because that would take for them to receive what they actually need, and they wouldn't want that. And this is also what's tricky about narcissism, is that when we then have trained ourselves into only accepting what we want, we will never choose what we need. So that black hole keeps getting bigger, and you never stop. And when you look at the case of Trump, like, he could eat the whole planet and he will still be hungry, because the more you try to satisfy yourself through gratification and admiration, the bigger the hole gets. But it is interesting how on the planet today, the most characteristic narcissist in human history is now the most powerful human in human history. And we just need to understand that is a mirror for us and our culture and where we are at. And, we have to figure out how to work with that also in ourselves.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, so have you got any pro tips, any practical tips on how we can focus more on long-term achievements and navigate through this fog of noise and short-term gratification?
Yes, a lot of them.
Yay!
Now, number one is to understand that when we have been trained into always seeking short-term gratification, meaning that we will not achieve long-term achievements, making us more miserable and wanting to satisfy even more short-term needs, right? We need to do the opposite. And it's imperative that you train yourself into having long-term goals, where you have to kind of trade off short-term gratification. So, learn to set long-term goals that you have to work for. And learn to sacrifice short-term gratification. For instance, if you want to lose weight, this is a typical situation, right? You've bought this bikini and you want to, I want to look good this summer. But you also want snacks, right? And you can't have both. Your brain is addicted to the short-term gratification, so you feel that need because you don't connect enough with the long-term goal. And it's that. Place yourself in situations and choices where you confront yourself with long-term achievement or short-term gratification again and again and again and again. Talk about it in your family, teach your kids, and really try to look at how your brain has been groomed and brainwashed into everything being instant and how little patience we have also with other people. We need to kind of look at that whole thing. Now, one way to enable your brain to then be more agreeable, because understand today we're all brainwashed. We're all narcissists at this point. The best way to move out of it is by taking care of yourself. For real. Because, short-term gratification is instead of taking care of yourself. It is always instead of. This is also why, for instance, when people do drugs, the brain will always choose that over taking care of yourself. Because taking care of yourself will build you. So, it's back to giving yourself what you actually need. So the less you take care of yourself, the more you will be in the short-term thing, and you will then stop taking care of yourself. Okay? You can see that with people who are very kind of addicted to short-term gratification. They're really not taking care of themselves and taking care of their lives in such a way that they can achieve long-term results. So, figure out what you actually need. Not what you want, but what do you need? What will heal you? Right? What will make you a better person? What will make you more happy? What will make you more balanced? For instance, what people do today as part of their addiction is that they may choose to approach situations where they will be triggered, be with people that are not good for them so they can have all these negative emotions so they can self-medicate. We often today seek being triggered in such a way that we can then self-medicate. Look at your patterns when it comes to what you do, your choices, and try to look at what do you need to become a balanced individual. Part of today's kind of world and the chamber of information that you're in, trying to make you as miserable as possible is trying to trigger you in a negative way, right? The news is like everything is terrible, right? So you will be triggered, negative, depressed, and you will then do more of, self-medication. Try to avoid that. Try to zoom out and look at the world. Try to look at your life. Find good people. You can never change a narcissist, so don't try. You can only change yourself. You can choose the people you're with. So make better choices and try to understand what you need in order to be a good, productive human. Because that will make it easier for you also to aim for more kind of long-term goals. One other thing that is really important for you to test your own narcissistic brain is to become a better listener, right? Narcissists are terrible listeners because they only use what someone says so they can take over and explain their thing. Now, the typical thing for the narcissistic response is when someone is talking, you just want them to finish and you feel this urgency to say something. Yeah, it's that. When you're a good listener, you're actively engaged in what they're saying. You are present, you are feeling their feelings, you're being supportive, and you want them to kind of tell the whole thing. And then you ask them more questions about their experience and, you hold space for them, right? And you give them because you're generous. And narcissists will just like, yeah, whatever. That reminds me, blah, it's that. And when you can feel the sense of urgency when you are in a conversation, that's a narcissistic trait. So then decide to train yourself into becoming a better listener. Listen to others because that's also how you can understand them. You need to understand them in order to feel empathy, to develop more patience, and because we need to understand each other better. Being a narcissist means that we don't understand other people. We just want other people to understand us, right? So focusing on listening is a very simple practice. And an extension of listening is learning. Part of the narcissistic way of thinking is that I already know everything, right? I'm the world expert on everything. And you can say that like with Trump, because every time he talks about something, he, of course, is the greatest expert. Nobody knows more about this than him, no matter what it is. And it's a natural way for a narcissist to always assume that because I have to be the best one, I am the best one, which means no one knows more about anything than I do. And one will often see knowledge as a threat. Because admitting that you've got something to learn becomes a threat towards your position. Because then you're not wonderful the way you are. So narcissists will often have an enormous resistance towards learning anything. So also, one of the best ways to deal with this in ourselves is learn something new every day. Like read, study things, listen to opinions that are the opposite of yours. Do not, like being in an echo chamber, that's very narcissistic. But you can go into many different echo chambers, like what are they thinking, what's their deal? That is healthy. But reading, getting more knowledge, educating yourself continuously throughout your life, that is also a way for you to avoid becoming narcissistic. Because if there's one thing knowledge will do to you, it's the more knowledge you gain, the more you also understand your cosmic insignificance. You know, and the more we learn, the more we relax in that insignificance, because we see that the universe is so big and it's actually working. And we're a tiny speck of dust living on another tiny speck of dust in the universe for a very, very short time, and the universe is working. And the more we learn, the more we can get a healthy perspective, because a narcissist will not have a perspective. They're always the most important person, and they will behave as if they are. And they will demand that the other people just accommodate them. The more knowledge you get, the more you learn, the more you understand that I'm insignificant, and that's wonderful. You don't see it as a threat. You don't see it, oh, well, about my position, because you understand, I don't have to impress anyone. It's just fascinating to learn more, right? So also having the attitude of forcing ourselves to learn, to study, to broaden our horizon, and then also admire people who are good at their stuff, right? Often when we learn more, well, it's wonderful when people are actual experts. You could admire other people's talents and be generous. That's also a way to move out of our own narcissism, is to not just, you know, give praise, but to actually mean it, to admire people who have achieved something, who have real expertise. It could be like a really good dancer or singer or, you know, artist, a scientist or accountant, whatever, but admiring someone for their skill and really taking time to see their journey, and like, I could never do that. Well, that's wonderful. Acknowledgement of others is not in the mind of a narcissist. They see everyone as a threat because it's about the highest position, right? And it's again part of the communication that you are a superstar, like everyone should admire you. And we have to stop seeing admiration as necessary or good. Again, back in the day, like after Second World War until recently, it was about achievement and what you did. When you achieved something, it was about the achievement. And when you looked at like press and media, you know, up till like 30 years ago, they would focus on the achievement, not so much on the person. And when they were interviewed, they would talk about the achievement, not the person. Just like, you are great because you did this. And gradually it's become more and more about the person, less about the achievement. And now it's just people, right? And who they are and what they think and what they feel and how that is in conflict with other people's feelings. It's all we talk about. So seeing that, we've also changed what we focus on. And this is also what we need to change in ourselves. What we also do when we seek knowledge, when we educate ourselves, is that we become more interested in the topic, in the achievement is what's done, what's built, than the individual. Again, we get a healthy perspective on ourselves. And we see whatever I build, whatever I contribute, it's a very small thing in the grand scheme of things. And that's wonderful. I can still give myself, you know, and my contribution, but so can everybody else. And when we have these healthy perspectives, it also gradually balances out the narcissistic tendencies. But it's like when we take care of ourselves, that will heal that black hole inside, right? It's like when we have the experience that, oh, nobody thinks that we're worth anything. Nobody thinks I should even survive. Right? We have to prove them wrong, and it's through self-centeredness that we can do that. So when you can see your own achievements, which is always long-term, right? That will heal that narcissistic black hole inside of you. So there's also, you know, grow into setting goals and achieving them. Anyone who achieves great things in life they heal. It's part of the human biology. It's part of the human journey. The whole life journey is supposed to be, you know, a journey of kind of upward achievement. We're supposed to climb mountains, and then they're part of an even bigger mountain, and we keep going. Just sitting at the bottom of a mountain being told that, oh, you're wonderful just the way you are, everyone should just come to you. Like, it doesn't work. Our biology is not hardwired for that. And that's also why we become miserable when we try. A narcissist will always be the most miserable of us all. They will never be satisfied. They will always feel that they're not good enough. No matter what they do, the black hole keeps getting bigger. And, you know, if you want out of your own self-medication, you need to look at your own narcissism.
When it comes to leadership, we see that quite a lot of leaders are narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear your perspective on that, and why do people check in with narcissistic leaders? Why are they attached to them?
It is what I explained, that we are drawn to the people we want to be ourselves. And I've explained this as the model of Greek gods and Indian gods, where you basically choose individuals and models and heroes with the traits that you want to develop in yourself. And in a world of increasing complexity, we have to find a smarter way because we can't figure it out. But we want the rewards, right? So the heroes today are the ones who are just like stealing and cheating and doing whatever, and then they get rich. No values, no ethics, because we all want that result, because survival is the truth. Biologically, doesn't matter how it got there. And one can also say that, you know, when you look at how humans behave, when someone's rich and powerful, they are treated like royalty, even if they are a drug lord, even if they're killed, even if they're completely corrupt. Once they have that position, everyone will submit and basically grovel and try to get their attention. Humans do not care about how you got there. They only care about that you are there. And when today humans are getting more and more corrupt, and they can find the shortcuts, and we say, wow, the mountain is taller now than ever. I can't do that. I need a shortcut. This person, he's got it. He's figured it out. So I will follow him. That's what it is about. So yes, we have more and more narcissistic leaders. And with that comes less knowledge, less insight, less wisdom. Because a narcissist, he doesn't need that because he's an expert by default. He will not listen to anyone because everyone's is just stupid. It's that. But it's the result of humans wanting to find a shortcut because they don't have the patience to do it the right way, and they want that instant gratification. And they think also, by relating to a person like that, a narcissist will reward other narcissists because he does not want to be confronted. So he will choose people who are very much like him because they're all thieves. They're all corrupt. And that's also what we see in a lot of corporations, where the narcissists are, they're gravitating towards the top, pulling with them people very much like them. And we see it in politics, we see it everywhere, because people want to be like them. Back as a few generations ago, selflessness would bring it to the top. Even in the world of business, in politics, they would be the heroes. Today, they will be laughed at. How can they be so stupid? Nobody cares. Look, I got money. We are at a terrible place. And we can only change ourselves. But I think it's smart too, because I've said this before, but I think in the so-called modern spiritual communities, this is worse than anywhere else in the world, because the narcissistic need to be special turned into something spiritual, right? I'm so special, I'm so chosen. My consciousness is so high. It's narcissism, and I've often said that modern spirituality is organized narcissism. It attracts narcissists to people who are not able to then achieve their goals in the real world. But they have this insatiable need for admiration, which means they're trying to be someone they're not. Because a narcissist's job is trying to make people believe, right? So it's modern spirituality is so full of it. And people tend to believe that modern spirituality is about that. It's about the posing, it's about being special, it's about being chosen, it's about, becoming someone that can be admired, and that you, because you're better than others, you deserve to be admired and respected. So you can make your own little bubble based on whatever you want to be the values and rules, and you can place yourself on top of it. And this is why also I think it's so important to apply, as I teach critical thinking, read multiple sources, relate to science, relate to psychology. We need also to understand how gullible we are, and do the work, heal ourselves, become better people. And if we're better people, it shows in real life too. So it's like trying to become balanced by understanding that just because we're in spirituality, we're not that special. We might actually be worse. But it's the doing the job, because I think what should attract people to modern spirituality is the willingness to work. To say, okay, I have all of this, I have all these potentials, but it doesn't just happen. I have to figure out how to do the work. I need to figure out how to make myself grow and heal and expand for real. And I think most people are attracted to spirituality. Also, they have that, but many also have very strong narcissistic structures.
Yes, then we've got a great question directly at that. So in spirituality, we often argue about this. Where is this fine line between narcissism and self-love, self-care? How do I know whether I'm becoming narcissistic or just allowing myself to live a good life, walk my path, take care of myself?
Yeah, I think it's about the admiration thing, right? And the thing is often, humans, they always, to self-medicate, they want to think of themselves as being special, being best. Understand that humans are extremely hierarchical. It's in our biology. It's how we understand who are the best specimen. It's that, right? Who have the best skills? Because throughout human history and evolution, the ones who have the best skills, they would be the best specimens. And just like when we look at primates, when we look at gorillas and you look at chimpanzees and all that, once there is a new leader, he will kill all the babies and then impregnate all the females. It's that. So gravitating towards the top of a group means that you have a better skill set, meaning that you probably have the better genes. That's what it is about. And that's also why, for instance, for most males, when they rise in whatever hierarchy they have, they become hornier and they can't stay monogamous. Because biologically, they're not supposed to. If you are at the top, your genes are supposed to dominate. So that's just a part of it. But back to the question, how we can kind of feel and understand the difference. When we have a healthy perspective, and we can see like other people may be wonderful at what they do, right? I always try to assist people in understanding that we need all perspectives, right? We are all like atoms in the same divine body. And the body is really the result of all atoms. So we need everyone. We need all perspectives. And having that love and also admiration for what others are able to do that you are not, and to be generous and grateful for their presence and their contribution, that will kind of keep you healthy. Because you can completely be yourself. I'm unique, I'm special, I've got this skill, I've got this talent. Nobody is as good as me when it comes to doing that. If it ends there, you're a narcissist. If you say, well, other people are good at what they're doing, isn't that wonderful? We can be, wonderful together. And also, when you're balanced, you're generous. You do not feel that your position is threatened when other people are doing what they are doing. You do not turn it into a hierarchical game. So, but the feeling is that, oh, I want other people to admire me, right? And it's like, how do I look, will other people admire me for this? And I think especially also if we are different behind closed doors than we are, when we interact with the world, that's also a sign, because then we're playing a game. So I think it's that we can all feel when our motivation is we want to be acknowledged and admired, instead of just like doing our thing, and be happy about that. And at the same time be happy for other people. Right? In the narcissist brain, it's always about that individual. And he or she will see all other people as audience, a threat, competition, something, but they're always a game. But seeing other people, understanding them, listening, to be generous, that is the opposite of narcissism. So if we can do that and at the same time go, yay me, because we can do both, that is still balanced and healthy. And it doesn't come from this crampy feeling inside that I have to be better. That, the thing where kids, standing in front of the mirror with a hairbrush, wanting to be a pop star, that energy, that is narcissism. Kids are supposed to have it to a certain degree, but it's that feeling, right? And normally we grow out of it as we figure ourselves out, but most people today don't. But as this is not difficult to navigate. I think we all are able to see when the thoughts we have about ourselves are unhealthy. And a narcissist has no sense of self-worth, which is really kind of funny. But that's the black hole. They feel insignificant, right? And thus, all these strategies don't work because they don't change anything, right? So it's just that. But it's really not difficult to navigate.
Yes, but is it possible to have too much empathy?
Now, empathy is an interesting thing because empathy can also be a power game. Genetically, empathy is a strategy of manipulation. It's recognizing when someone has a weakness that you can exploit. And then you're supposed to feel empathy because they need your help. And you give, but you then have the influence, you have the power, and that's money in the bank. If you think back in history, right, for most of human evolution, people didn't have a lot. They could not invest in stocks, right? They didn't have money. Who you were and how you interacted with other people, that would be your worth. So empathy was a way for you to, I can invest myself here, so that person becomes dependent on me, or that person will owe me something. That's money in the bank. So when I need something, I know this person will be there for me. So this is how empathy developed. It was simply a survival strategy. So that's biological empathy. Spiritually, as the heart opens, We learn to have real empathy, which is simply a state of love with no direction or purpose other than loving. So, it's not I love you, it's the state I love, because that's who I am. That is closer to spiritual love because it's unconditional. It has no direction. It's a state. And that's where we are most in harmony and in alignment with life, and it can flow through us. Because in that state, we are not standing in the way, and life can flow through and reach its own creation and reach other people with that love. So, we can have too much of the biological empathy, which is I feel so sorry for you. Like, we feel a lot, but it can also be a power game to portray yourself in a certain way. It could also be placing yourself under to establish emotional dependency. There are a lot of things going on there. So we can have too much of that. And to me, that is not real empathy. It's simply survival strategy. And that's okay too, but that's where we need to look at, what am I doing? Why do I feel sorry for people when they have made their own choices? Why do I always feel I need to kind of meddle in? Money in the bank, right? And it's manipulation. It's okay, but only to a certain degree. Spiritual empathy, there can never be enough of it. Never. There can never be too much love if it is unconditional and detached. So we need to, in a way, leave the first level of empathy behind and go all in on the higher type of empathy.
All right. So today it was not just a big day for the inauguration of the new president, but the launch of some major vanity projects. Both Donald Trump and Melania Trump launched cryptocurrency coins. But who else got into the ring? Elon Musk. And we have a couple of questions about Elon Musk. What has happened with Elon? I used to look at him as a smart person that had big goals to do a lot of cool stuff that others did not dare to even try to do. Now I get more confused as I see him as a potential coming dictator or dictator's assistant. Could you comment on what happens with super rich humans and the thirst for power?
Well, I think it's easy to imagine and understand that humans are not really cut out for this type of power and wealth. We would all go fucking nuts because we get a completely warped perspective of our own importance. And for him, it's even more difficult because he's got Asperger's, meaning that it's a way of thinking that easily can commodify everything, where there is a lack of empathy and human understanding. This is why you can just like fire people and have fun with it, right? So when you are in this state where you have no natural empathy and everything is basically things that you can, create with, and then you get to a point of power and wealth when nobody will correct you because you can buy them off or have them killed or whatever, right? We need correction as humans. Because we, in our patterns, our way of being, we don't have any off buttons. Genetically, we're supposed to just be who we are, and that is supposed to just like grow forever. And as I say, like the one who wins, that's truth. So we're also hardwired biologically to, when we get more power, we start to believe in our own power. We start believing in our own genius and that we're always right. Because hierarchy triggers us genetically to feel, I should take over. I know better. So anyone when people have just a little bit of power, it doesn't take much. The brain will go, I know better than other people. Just look at, for instance, politicians, right? The moment they are voted into office, they behave as if I know better than normal people. I can understand this. They can't. It's part of our biology. And think of him being the richest man in the world and now also the most influential. Yeah. Without Asperger's, it would have been an impossible situation. With Asperger's, it's even worse. I think he's doing splendidly based on his personality structure, but understand that this level of power will turn anyone mentally insane. You lose perspective of anything, and nothing has value anymore. He can do whatever he wants and get away with it, right? And it means that the brain and the mind will keep growing, no correction. So of course he believes in his own genius, and humans are disposable. It happens to everyone who gravitates towards, that level of power. So this is one of those things, but people are rooting for it because they want to be him. So they turn him into a god, just like they do with Trump and other people, because these are the people humans want to be now.
Yes, we have another question on YouTube. How do you deal with a clearly narcissistic boss that does actually have power over you in that particular situation at your job?
This is tricky because you cannot change a narcissist. And narcissists, when they have power, they demand submission, right? Because they want what they want, and if they don't get what they want, they will punish the people around them. That's what they do. So I'd say, like, get a new job. The only way to deal with narcissists is to not play their games. But a narcissist will experience their power only when power is abused, because it's never about achieving anything beyond their own satisfaction. That's also the victim of their own need to be satisfied. So when you use your power and position for good, that doesn't do it for you. It's by making other people squirm, by making other people uncomfortable, by forcing them to do things they don't want to do, that you can feel, this is power. I'm important because I can make you do this. This is very typical for narcissists. So you can't change that. So either you accept that this is how it works, or you will have to find a new job. Because when confronting a narcissist, they will make themselves the victim. You will be the problem. And they will often be quite vicious. So, the only way is to not play their game, play by their rules. But if you're in a situation where you have to, then you go along with it until you can't. You cannot win.
All right. We do have one more question that we've not addressed. We've talked about what we can kind of individually do about narcissists in our lives, also dealing with our own narcissism. But we did also pose the question, is it possible as a collective on the planet, can we stop this trend? And if we can, what do you foresee as kind of a trigger point for that? And if we cannot, where do we go from here?
Collective narcissism will make a society collapse. So it's that. It's when our world is collapsing. Because then we have to work together to find solutions. Now we believe that we can push a button and everything should just work. And we have a sense of not being responsible. Narcissism is also about never being responsible. We take credit, but we're never responsible. And this is also how corporations have trained us, right? That you can make choices based on what they are offering, but you don't have the power. You are not responsible. You're supposed to consume. So what we can do is, in a way, wait for it to get really bad. Because people have to snap out of the narcissistic mindset, and it means that it will have to get to a point where things are collapsing. That's how we snap out of it. Because remember that when things go bad, your genes will take over, right? Because you have a negotiation between active experience and your genes and DNA. So you're supposed to, to adapt to your surroundings and learn how to live and to be productive and successful, because that is how your DNA gradually will update. Oh, these are the survival strategies. Now, this is how we win. So then, when you do something and it works, and you can be creative, figure something new out, your brain will choose the body of evidence coming from your experience over genetic programming. This is why you can train yourself past whatever programs you have. But when what you are doing is not working and it's triggering your survival instinct, then the brain will go, oh, let's go with what we know. Let's use, the old recipe book, because that works. It's worked for, millions of years. It will work now. So then that will step in, and that means that we will have more clear survival values. We will go back to how humans have operated throughout history. So this happens every time times get tough. We become more similar to humans throughout history. It will happen again. And that will be necessary corrective, because what we're experiencing now is extremely unhealthy. We're killing ourselves, we're killing the planet, we're just and we have to get past it, but we will only accept to change course once we see our world collapsing. And when they say, well, we can't have corporations doing this to us, we cannot admire these assholes. We have to build a world that is responsible and sustainable, and then people will come together. Because in crises, humans always become better than when life is good. It's just one of those things, because what we have in our genes are better programs. Unfortunately, that's the case, but it's just, the worse things get, the best humans will kind of step forward, and the best in humans will step forward. So that is also something we are gradually seeing, but it's a very slow process.
Yes, on YouTube. So we've got a question about this black hole that you talked about. Is it kind of like a wound of the soul, and does everybody have one? And then the second question is, can we actively become a filler of that hole? You talked about it for ourselves, but can we also do that for others? So two questions there.
It's not like in you as soul. It's part of a hole in your curriculum. It's missing pages in your textbook. It's that. It's still annoying, but it can be fixed, right? And often it's the same. You need to then identify what's missing here, and then you need to start compensating, and that's how you heal. It's not difficult. As a spiritual being, you do it all the time. But yes, when we incarnate, and that is, our behavior is actually making things worse, over time we will figure it out. So since we're all here to work out our karma, meaning that we, just like in university, we may be here to take different educations, but we're still in the same university. It's the same thing. So part of your karma will be the same as other people. Some parts of your karma will be unique to you, and maybe some groups that you're connected with. So it's definitely kind of your own journey of studies. So yes, when karma is activated, we will immediately be triggered by our incompetence and what we're in lack of. when it comes to being in harmony with what is. And the resistance to learn, because we always believe that I already know what I'm doing. It was working fine until this moment, so it must be the world, right? Because we insist of doing what we have been doing, and then the environment is changing because that represents the expansion of consciousness that you have not yet adjusted to. And then conflict begins. And then we'll work through our karma and we'll figure it out. This happens both on an individual level and collective levels. So what's happening in the world is just that. And it's okay. But yes, whenever we are triggered through our karmic processes, it feels like something is wrong and it will become existential. And then the human life form will try to figure out different strategies. And this is what is kind of forcing a human to adapt and to move forward and to grow without, as a human, having any understanding of what's really going on. So we're all on that journey, but in different ways. And we all have the capacity to heal. We can all grow, we can all learn, we can all become better versions, we can all study past our curriculum, right, and become everything that is available to us. But our current culture is trying to do the opposite. And many people through this current civilization are more asleep when they leave the lifetime than when they came in. It's supposed to be the opposite, that we become more and more awake, we understand more, we grow. But this current civilization is in a very unhealthy place. This is why spiritual work, true spiritual work, is more important than ever. People have never needed meditation more. Any spiritual practice, as I tell people, I don't care what you do, just do something. Choose a spiritual practice. Whatever you do, it will work better than not doing it. It's not, necessary to have the perfect belief system, the perfect teacher, the perfect whatever. Just do something. And gradually, as you connect, gradually as you begin to wake up, you then understand more of your own journey in why you're here and the influence of the society and how to kind of take over. So that's also what is available to us. We don't have to just sit here and take it, because that represents some of the kind of karmic starting point that we have. It also represents our own personal resistance. This is why it's so easy to just slip into unconsciousness and just let ourselves become slaves of this current civilization. But we don't have to. I think it's you now.
Yeah, we got a question in the audience.
I would like to hear your comments coming back to Elon, because he met a German politician from the right party. And I wonder where we are heading with that. Elon intervening in German politics.
He will intervene as much as he can because he believes that he's a genius. He's got all the answers. Understand that when you gravitate to the top, for the most part, you will always become a fascist. Because fascism is about the devaluation of human life, and you have these big projects, right? Where these kind of grandiose ideas about the big changes, and that will cost human lives, but it's worth it. People should sacrifice themselves for the greater good, and the greater good is whatever those people feel should be the monuments of their own egos. When you have wealth and power, this is how you think. You are more important than other people, right? You know everything. You should rule the world. This is also why in the United States now, it is an oligarchy. It's not a democracy, where you have the wealthy and the powerful ruling and controlling government and seeing it as part of their business plan. And they see it as, this is how it's supposed to be, because we're better than other people. We're the ones who know. Where in a democracy, one understands that, that needs balance, because they just want to fill their own pockets by taking control of people, and this should be for the good of everyone. Business and money should help people. It should not be the other way around. So one needs government and politics to balance that, and therefore you need people who are not part of the corporations and money industry to make sure that everything happens in a balanced way. So their job is to try to understand different perspectives and try to make that work, which is of course an impossible task. But an oligarchy will always be fascist by nature, because again, not seeing the need of government structures or institutions or separation of power. They want to concentrate power. They want these big monuments of themselves. So it's always, when you get to that point, you want these big changes that you design, and it will cost people their lives. But you're not sacrificed with it. Sacrifice has to be made because you're not part of it. It's natural. So you can see that with a lot of people who have been kind of more liberal to start with. As they gain more power, they become fascist. It's very few people who do not develop into that, because it's a natural way of thinking on that level. Humans are disposable. It's about these big lines and the big structures and the big everything, making things work, like a machine. But it's, as I say, it's mostly creating monuments. And it's completely natural. Humans aren't better than this. And the thing is that most of all, us in the same situation would behave exactly the same. We also need to be realistic about that.
All right, on YouTube, and this actually, it hit me a little bit because I'm also a man in the West, and another man in the Western culture asked, is there any difference between men from the West and men from the Middle East with regards to narcissism and their behavior? And I can offer that I think often the story from the Western perspective is that men in the Middle East tend to be more narcissistic because of their treatment of women and that kind of thing. But I have a feeling there's a whole lot of misunderstanding going on. Could you shed some light on that?
Now, as we talked about, a lot of the collective narcissism we have in the West is the result of our whole culture being on a very unhealthy path. And when you look at, for instance, the Arab culture, it focuses on family, on greater family, meaning that you get correction. You get mirrored. If you do weird stuff, you will be told. You always have 20 people breathing down your neck, right? And so based on the value system they operate on, there is a greater sense of responsibility in hierarchy, which means that people often, from a survival point of view, are better at doing what they are expected to do. So in that respect, there will be less of this type of narcissism because there is no room for it. But because traditional societies are more hierarchical in the way that they do have this structure in society where there's a very little migration. The people on top, of course, just live in their own bubble. And they live the life of a narcissist. But normal people will experience less narcissism as a mental illness compared to us in the West. But, that may change. So it doesn't mean that we have, in our part of the world, specific biological tendencies in a way. This is simply based on the choices we've made in this civilization after the Second World War and how all of these things have worked together. And it's a huge social experiment, and it's not going well.
All right, this might be a natural conclusionary question because on YouTube a student asks, what would the world or the future world actually look like without this really strong influence of narcissism?
Well, if we go back to a narcissist lacking empathy and is in a constant state of stress and fear about their own position and their own significance, and they're just trying to prove that they are allowed to live. And if we think of, okay, if that is done, if we feel that, yeah, I am me, I have my talents, I am who I am, I have to figure out what that means in this world, to figure out a way to use my skills and my intelligence and my talents to uplift, to contribute. Well, if you imagine that, then that will happen. If we all try to use ourselves and share ourselves in a way that uplifts and nurtures and assists other people in becoming everything they can be. It means that we, instead of competing, right, and seeing other people as competition, we share. And think of like we all have different perspectives, we all have different talents. Think of having people around you who actively and openly use what they have to lift you, to heal you, to make sure that you may experience your talents being productive, and then you do the same for them. Humans will move in this direction, but first we have to get, this phase will have to be done. And we're not definitely there yet. At some point, narcissists are so boring because it's all about them. They don't really do anything, right? In our biology, survival is collaboration and sharing. Narcissism is the opposite. Narcissism, therefore, is death collectively. And we'll figure it out. Because otherwise, this civilization will not survive. And since narcissism is an attempt at survival based on childhood experiences and that experience of neglect and trying to compensate, as in like, when you experience yourself as insignificant because you don't get the confirmation, that volume button on self-centeredness will have to increase because you want the attention of your parents. You want for them to invest so that you can learn their survival skills, because if you don't get that, it means that you're insignificant. We are not going to invest in you because you should just die. You're weak. Right? So you want that attention, so it means that you have to increase the volume. So when we get to the point of being bored with our own narcissism and the narcissism of others and return to collaboration, understanding, sharing, nurturing, which is so much more fun and interesting and loving. Narcissism is a very painful state to be in. And you're also a slave because you just have to do whatever will give you attention. And when you look at, for instance, a person like Trump, on his rallies, he will just say whatever will make the audience share. So he tests out different things, and whatever will give him the greatest response, he will say that. There's no other agenda behind it, right? So therefore, it's not authentic. It's not you. You become the slave of whatever people will give you attention for. And you see that with a lot of influencers, right? In a way, they humiliate themselves to get attention. They're clowns. Not in a good way, because, clown is also, the classic clown is a very important function, something completely different. But when you use the term clown here, it's this ridiculous figure that really adds no value or not doing anything. It's just about that instant gratification. We'll get bored with it over time. But the way to change it, if we want to be part of that change, is to not be one ourselves. And as always, we have to look at ourselves. We cannot point to other people and say they're doing it wrong. It is not important. We have to use the world as a mirror and see, like, okay, what is it in me that is being shown through this mirror? When we have chosen to incarnate in this time, it's because, it's part of our journey too. And it's an interesting one. Because then it means that we can actually heal the ego. We can heal the self. We can heal all of this. And we can just learn how to. And we can turn into more loving, generous, giving, nurturing people who will then give our children and other people what they actually need and not what they want. Because when we give someone what they want, we want their confirmation that, oh, you like me because I gave you that and now you're happy. When you give what someone needs, they may not have that reaction, but you don't care because you know in the long run, this is what will bring them success. Right? So look at yourself. Try to focus on the greater good. Focus on other people. And as I always say, when we focus on other people, include yourself. If not, you're in a power game. When we're generous, we have to be generous with ourselves too. We have to take care of ourselves and our own needs before we even understand what it means to take care of other people's needs. Right? We have to do it both on the inside and the outside, and it starts with the inside. And being true to that. The narcissist feels that they have no power, so they need to attract other people's attention. You are the great healer in your own life, in your own journey. You can fulfill every need. You can bring yourself to the highest mountain. You have everything in you, but you have to learn how to do it and how to work and how to become it. And this is, to me, what spiritual work is about. It's not about belief systems. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about all of that. It's simply about all of us waking up to who we truly are and to realize everything we have and everything that is available to us. So we can then be on this journey of awakening and become more and more true to who we are and what is, and then share that. But in your life, practice generosity. Because generosity is the opposite of being a narcissist. And if you think of being generous in every possible way, listening, seeing people, sharing, nurturing, also taking care of people when needed, helping, and you include yourself. Generosity comes from you having something to give. Right? It means that there's an overflow of resources, overflow of energy, overflow of love. So investing in yourself, taking care of yourself, making sure that you are healthy and balanced and that you set goals, that you work towards them, that you achieve them, and that you learn about your own tools, and that you, yes, indeed, you can learn how to master your life and turn it into what you want it to be. You become relaxed. You become loving. And then you can also share your life skills. This is not difficult. Humans have been doing this throughout evolution. So the easiest way to deal with this is like zoom out, try to look at our current civilization and look at this part as the unhealthy collective mental illness that it is. Look at yourself and understand that you are the great healer. This is not difficult to deal with, but you have to unsubscribe from this enormous flood of influence and manipulation from the world around you. And say, I don't need this. When you do the healing work, for real, You don't need to self-medicate, right? You don't need that. You become strong and free and independent. And that is, what spiritual growth is about. It's becoming that individual vibrating independence and freedom and generosity in such a way that then you begin to influence the world around you through your example, through your generosity, through your love. And then, maybe even a narcissist may notice that there's something here because they're in pain. They're trapped in this short-term gratification and self-medication. They need to be shown that there is a different way. So be that way and be that example. And love. Everything comes back to love. When you truly love, when you truly see, when you truly share, everything around you will melt. Not instantly, also as a vehicle, also in service. You need to have this as a long-term goal and work for it every day in every moment.
Thank you so much, IKYA, and thank you all for joining us tonight for IKYA Live. Before we go, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on the unique sort of gift that IKYA Live is. We present it as a news program, and it is really a news program. Every time we get together, IKYA addresses some spiritual principle that is, in a way, wrapped up in the package of what is going on in the world around us. And what IKYA Live does in such a beautiful way is to help us understand that spirituality and the study of spirit, the study of what and who we are and how life works, it's not esoteric, it's not fuzzy, it's not even that hard to understand once you start really looking at the details. IKYA Live and spiritual teacher IKYA help us to bring spirituality down into the here and now, the everyday, and understand that there's opportunities to grow and to love and to heal in every moment all around us. And another aspect, no other news program that I know of gives you concrete tools, things that you can practice, different techniques and things to focus on, and real ways in your everyday life to bring your spiritual study to bear on how you behave and how you treat people around you and on the world then that we are co-creating. So I just wanted to reflect on that for a moment and then warmly invite you again to share tonight's episode as widely as you can with family, friends, anybody you care about. I mean, tonight's episode is a gift that somebody who is experiencing a narcissist in their life or the one suffering from that selfish focus, everybody can benefit. Everyone can bring what IKYA taught tonight into their own life and actually get results. So, share this with people as a tool that they can use to live a better life. All right. So this has been IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. My name is Andy. We are here at the IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next third Monday of February, right here on YouTube Live. And we're also sending on TikTok Live tonight, and we will try to continue doing that so that we can be available to a wider audience. So look for us there as well. All right, until then, take care and be well.